What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another Where Is. I hope you all are doing amazing today. Thank you to everyone who has been listening to every episode so far. I really appreciate it. Today's case is very frustrating for many different reasons, but let's just jump right into it. Today, we will be discussing the disappearance of Monica Bowie. Monica Renee Bowie was born on March 30th in 1974. She grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, with her mother, Linda Howard, her stepfather, James, and her two sisters and brother. She was very close with her family and always wanted to be a good example for her siblings. Monica's mother described her as someone who was independent and was a go-getter from day one. She says that when Monica was just 2 years old, she showed that she would be okay and would be able to hold her own. Linda says that Monica excelled in school. She says that she always had good grades and was also an honors student. So after graduating high school, Monica attended Cheyney University of Pennsylvania. She was a part of the accounting program and went on to graduate with an accounting degree and was also honored as class valedictorian in 1996. So after graduating college, Monica decided to move to Atlanta, Georgia to start her life and follow her dreams. So she moves to Atlanta in May of 1997. Now, although Monica was in Atlanta, her mother Linda says that she never missed any birthdays or family gatherings, so she was still very active in her family's lives. So again, Monica moves to Atlanta, and when she gets there, she moves in with her best friend whose name was Danielle Sparks. Both Monica and Danielle got jobs in the city, and they both really enjoyed the city of Atlanta. Now, Monica was very ambitious, and she actually started up two businesses, Go To Girl, which was a hip-hop production company, and La Coco Wear Clothing, which was a boutique she owned off of the Metropolitan Avenue in Atlanta. Now, of course, with any business, it costs money to get it up and running. So in order for Monica to provide the necessary funds for her business, she began working as an exotic dancer. Now, she did inform her mother that she was dancing, but she told her, don't worry, this is just something that's temporary to help her get her businesses started. Now, Linda says that to her knowledge, Monica had only danced for about 3 to 4 months. Now, the place that Monica had been dancing at was called the Blue Flame Lounge in Atlanta. Now, this was and still is a popular club in West Atlanta, and a lot of people went to this club, like businessmen and people in the entertainment industry and athletes. So one night while Monica was there, she met a man named Mark Canty. Now, Mark Canty was a businessman. He worked in real estate, and, he became very fond of Monica very quickly for just how professional she was, so he offered her to do his accounting for him. Now, Monica again owned her two businesses, but she was also working as an accountant for different clients throughout Atlanta whom she would help with their taxes. So again, Monica started working for Mark doing his accounting. So in 2005, Monica and Mark began a romantic relationship, and eventually they got engaged. However, with Monica being so focused on her work life, she also wanted to be an event planner. So with that, her being so involved in her career, her relationship with Mark quickly ended. So in January of 2006, Monica decides to move into her own place, so she moves to the Berkshires at Lenox Park, which is an upscale neighborhood located on the north side of Atlanta. Now, if you guys are familiar with Atlanta, the Berkshires is located about 8 minutes from Lenox Square, which is a popular mall in Atlanta. Now, during this time, Monica had been working an event planning job when she met a man named Shernada Walters, whose nickname was Rico. Now, Rico at the time was 35 years old and he was a car salesman. So in 2007, she tells her mother that her and Rico are engaged. Now, her mother says that she thought that Rico was just a little too immature and just too into the street life for Monica because that wasn't who she was. She wasn't into the street life, so her mother obviously was a bit cautious about this relationship. Now, 2 years prior to him meeting Monica, Rico had served time on drug charges. So, in the morning of June 20th in 2007, Rico tells Monica that he needs to borrow her car because he needed to go to the barbershop to get a haircut. So Monica lets him borrow her car and he goes to the barbershop. Now, there were police officers who were patrolling the areas around the shop that day, and they began to smell marijuana that was coming from the area where Monica's car was. So, police decided to search Monica's car, and they do end up finding marijuana as well as a handgun in the vehicle. So, police do end up arresting Rico, and they tell him to call whoever the owner of the vehicle is to come pick it up. So Monica is called down to the station, and in her mind, she's just coming to pick up her car. Now, once she arrives at the station, according to her attorney, Gerald Griggs, Monica tells them, she let him borrow her car so that he could go to the barbershop. So police began to question Monica about the drugs that were found in the vehicle. They asked her, do you know anything about the drugs and the handgun that were found in the vehicle? And Monica tells them that she didn't know anything about them, but police still ended up arresting Monica. Now, police did end up looking at Monica's criminal history, which of course her record was clean, so they decided to release her and her charges were later dismissed in court. Now, as far as Rico goes, he had a different outcome. Police did end up charging Rico with possession of drugs and having a gun, which was a violation of his parole, so he remained in jail. So this brings us to the day of Monica's disappearance. So because of the situation with Rico and the car, Monica decided to hire her own attorney, whose name again was Gerald Griggs. So she leaves her apartment complex to meet her attorney across town on the afternoon of July 5th. Now, despite what happened with Rico and his arrest, Monica believed that they could put this all behind them and move forward. According to Gerald, Monica was still excited about the engagement and becoming a wife. He also says that Monica seemed perfectly fine that day. She was smiling and laughing, and overall, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. So after the meeting, Monica heads back home around 4 p.m. Now, later that night, she decides to go out to dinner, and after dinner, she gets dropped off by a friend at her apartment complex. So around 11 to 11:15 p.m., 5 witnesses state that they heard someone screaming for help coming from the apartment parking deck. Monica was said to have been forced into a vehicle by 2 men, and then the vehicle was seen speeding out of the parking deck. Now, the witnesses did call 911 right away, and police actually showed up to the scene within minutes of the calls, and they immediately began searching the scene for evidence. Witnesses described the two men as one being a heavyset black male with a beard and looked to be about 20 to 30 years old, and the other male was described by witnesses as a dark skinned black male who also looked to be 20 to 30 years old. They also described the vehicle to the police, which was a maroon 2002 Mercury Sable, and luckily one of the witnesses actually wrote down the license plate. So, as police began investigating the area, they immediately saw many different items in the parking lot, such as jewelry, a broken perfume bottle, a pair of eyeglasses, a box of chicken, a manila folder, as well as two broken fingernails. So clearly, there was a major struggle between Monica and whoever had taken her. Now, just hours after Monica disappears, police are still searching the area for clues when they notice a man who looks suspicious walking around the apartment complex. So, police decide to keep an eye on this man, and as he gets into his car, police decide to pull the man over and they identify him as 27-year-old Lonnie Bennett. Now, in the police report, it says that they found a large paper bag that had a large amount of cash inside, but police never stated exactly how much cash was actually in the bag. Now, Monica's attorney says that Monica did not know who Lonnie was, but that Lonnie was actually an acquaintance of Rico, who, again, Monica was engaged to. So, police bring Lonnie in for questioning, and they discover that Lonnie has a criminal history of narcotics and theft charges. Now, Monica's attorney Gerald says that, it's pretty strange how Lonnie was at the apartment complex with a large sum of money and Monica being missing at the same time. So the next day, on July 6th, her mother receives a call from the DelCap County Police, and they inform her that Monica is missing, and Linda, her sister Joan, as well as their two daughters, all jump in the car and drive from Pittsburgh to Atlanta, which is almost an 11-hour drive, to meet with the police and get more answers as to what was going on. So once they arrived in Atlanta, Monica's former fiance Mark actually helped her family search throughout the city for her. Her mother says that the family would go put up flyers throughout the city. She says that they wouldn't even know where they were at times, but she didn't care. She just wanted Monica back safe and sound. Now, obviously, Monica's family did have to return back home to Pittsburgh, so they decided to reach out to Suzanne and Jean Vincent. Now, Suzanne and Jean are psychic sisters who've helped in solving high-profile crimes, and of course, this sparked Linda's interest. So, according to Linda, they told her information about Monica that they most likely could not have known. Suzanne says that she felt that Monica knew who did this and that she knew that she was in danger that night. Now, at this point, local reporters are catching wind of the story, and they believe that her fiancé Rico may be the cause of her disappearance. Now, again, Rico is still in jail at the time of her abduction, but her mother, Linda, does wonder if there is any information that Rico knows that he's just not sharing. So Linda decides to go speak to him for herself. So she goes to speak with him and she asks him if he knows anything about Monica's abduction, and she says that he tells her that he didn't know anything, and she told him that she didn't believe him. Now, obviously, we know that Rico couldn't have physically taken Monica himself, with him still being in jail, but that doesn't mean that he couldn't have played some part in this. Now, on July 6th, which again was the day after Monica disappeared, there's a major break in the investigation. So, on the west side of town, police find a car that had been set on fire near Hunter Hills Baptist Church. Now, this car had actually been reported stolen earlier that same day. Now, the vehicle was a burgundy 2002 Mercury Sable, which matched the description of the vehicle that witnesses saw speeding out of the parking deck at Monica's apartment complex the night that she went missing. Now, the license plate also matched the description of the vehicle that night as well. Now, luckily, police were able to locate the owner of the vehicle. The owner supposedly let a friend borrow the vehicle, but the friend never ended up returning the vehicle, and that friend's name is Jasper Keels. So Jasper was arrested by the DeKalb County Police and was charged with theft and marijuana possession. However, police aren't certain if Jasper knew Monica personally. Now, what is interesting is 2 months after Monica's disappearance on September 13th of 2007, police charged Jasper Keels with the kidnapping of Monica. So, according to the police, they had enough probable cause to arrest Jasper at that time, but of course, as time progresses, police just weren't able to prove Jasper guilty of kidnapping Monica, even though there were witnesses who saw the same vehicle, as well as 2 men forcing Monica into the vehicle and speeding away into the night. So again, Jasper was found guilty of car theft, but he couldn't be connected to Monica's kidnapping. Now, there is another person that police are interested in, and that is Monica's ex-fiance, Mark. Now, Mark has had a few run-ins with the law, but according to Monica's mother, Linda, he never hid his past from them. So in 2006, Mark, along with 2 associates, were charged in a multi-million-dollar real estate scheme. So, as far as suspects, we have Rico, her fiance, Lonnie Bennett, who was seen suspiciously around her apartment complex and had the large amount of cash, Jasper Keels, who stole the vehicle described as the vehicle involved in Monica's disappearance, and possibly Monica's ex-fiance Mark, who again had a prior run-in with the law before meeting Monica. So what all connects all 4 men is that they all have a criminal history and somehow, some way, all have a connection with Monica. Now, police do suspect that foul play was involved, as well as illegal narcotics playing a role in Monica's disappearance, but police have yet to provide any details or other information as to how Monica got tangled into these activities. Now, Monica's case is currently suspended, and police say that they've pretty much gone through every lead and suspect that they've had, so we still do not know who is responsible for Monica's kidnapping, and unfortunately, Monica is still missing, and there hasn't been any leads that could possibly lead to where Monica could be. Now, at the time of her disappearance, Monica was 34 years old. She stood at 5 foot 4 inches and weighed about 135 pounds. She is African American with black hair, brown eyes, and has braces and pierced ears. She was last seen wearing a dark green shirt and blue jeans. If alive, Monica would be 47 years old. If you have any information, you can contact the DelCap Police Department at 770-724-7715. I truly hope that Monica is out there somewhere and that we can bring her home together. Me personally, I believe that all of the men involved, well, maybe not her ex-fiance Mark, but all of the other men I definitely believe had something to do with it or at least know what happened to Monica. But again, I truly hope we can bring more awareness to this case together, and my thoughts and my prayers go out to her family. Now, that is everything as far as the case, but I did just want to talk about something briefly. Now, this doesn't have to do with Monica's case, but I just wanted to mention a few things about awareness. So, I know I've mentioned it in a few other episodes, but recently I was just looking back and, just thinking about all the times, I would go to the grocery store or even the mall sometimes by myself and, basically really just not paying attention at all to what's going on around me. And, as I began to do more research on cases and everything, that's when I realized, like, wow, like I'm really walking into stores, looking down at my phone and, only really looking up if a car is passing by. And, obviously growing up, I knew that people could get kidnapped and go missing, but I guess I never really thought about it. And it's kind of sad to say. And, I never really have done this, but sometimes, I see people with earpods in while, shopping in the store. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I love music too, but I just feel like we are in a time now where it's like, okay, I might need to wait until I get back into the car to listen to my song because, again, it's like I'm not trying to scare anyone, but there are a lot of weirdos out here. And I just feel like a lot of people are getting more bold and smarter with the things that they're doing. And I just want y'all to be safe. I do have a few stories from college where I was just like, girl, what were you thinking? But let me know if you guys would be interested in hearing some of those stories. But again, thank you to everyone who has just been tuning in. I appreciate it so much. But I hope everyone has a great rest of the day, and I will see you in the next one.